Harker! The shrieks of a Krellian echoed through the alien barracks as a human ripped its spindly arm off with his bare hands. Everyone in the galaxy feared the humans, and for damn good reason. Wayne Baker was part of the reason. He was a 35-year-old human explorer investigating ancient alien ruins on planet Zeta 9 in the Andromeda Galaxy, with 3 crewmates, his bestie Jack, their medic Dr. Chen, and pilot Steve. "Wayne, you hearing that weird hissing noise?" Jack asked as they hiked closer to the obsidian megastructures jutting from the planet's surface like jagged teeth. As Steve started pitching the tents, Wayne pulled Dr. Chen aside. Dr. Chen nodded. "Every hair on my neck is standing straight up. We're not alone here, Wayne." After chowing on Nutripacks, the team sat in a circle as Zeta 9's twin moons rose. "Imagine if we actually found a new intelligent species," Jack mused. "We'd go down in history." "Imagine if we found a species that wanted to end our history," Wayne countered. "I'm telling you, something's out there." A flash of liquid silver in Wayne's peripheral vision. He leapt up and sprinted after it. "Wayne, get back here," Jack called. Wayne vaulted over rubble, chasing the blurred figure. 8 feet tall, muscular, shimmering skin. His flashlight beam landed on the creature's face. Ancient silver eyes pierced Wayne's soul. An unknowable entity. A Hirogen. The Hirogen spoke. Wayne's universal translator glitched out. He didn't need it. The meaning was clear. If Wayne and his team couldn't stop these Hirogens, humanity's expansion to the stars would come to a gruesome end. And so would the human race. Wayne's heart raced as he took a step back. His eyes locked on Vola's ancient silver gaze. He raised his hands, trying to communicate through gestures, but Vola remained still as a statue. In a blur of motion, Vola's arm shot out, his long fingers wrapping around Wayne's throat. Wayne felt his feet leave the ground as Vola lifted him with ease. Wayne clawed at the Hirogen's hand, struggling to break free, but it was like trying to bend steel. Black spots danced in Wayne's vision. His lungs burned for air. Just as he felt himself slipping into unconsciousness, he heard Jack's voice pierce the darkness. "Wayne!" Jack, Dr. Chen, and Steve emerged from the shadows, their weapons aimed at the Hirogen. Vola released Wayne, who crumpled to the ground, gasping and coughing. Dr. Chen rushed to his side, her fingers pressed against his neck, checking his pulse. Vola took a step back, his posture a mix of curiosity and disdain as he eyed the weapons trained on him. He seemed unfazed by the threat, his focus shifting between the humans. Then he spoke, a series of guttural clicks and hisses that their translators struggled to decipher. Fragments of meaning came through. "Leviathan sacred ground at desecration." Wayne pushed himself to his feet with Dr. Chen's help, his mind reeling. The Hirogen was warning them away, telling them their presence here was forbidden. A distant rumble, like the growl of some ancient beast, emanated from the ruins. The ground trembled beneath them. Cracks spiderwebbed across the obsidian structures. As the planet's surface shattered like glass, the team raced across the crumbling terrain, their hearts pounding in their chests. Vola, his movements swift and sure, led the way, his ancient eyes fixed on the distant silhouette of their ship. Behind them, the ruins collapsed, swallowed by the hungry earth. The ground convulsed beneath their feet, and massive fissures snaked across the landscape, devouring everything in their path. Structures that had stood for millennia vanished in an instant, reduced to rubble and dust. Steve, his breath ragged and his legs burning, struggled to keep up with the others. As he leapt over a jagged crack, the ground gave way beneath him. He let out a terrified scream as he tumbled into the abyss, his arms flailing, grasping at nothing but air. "Steve!" Jack cried out, his voice raw with anguish. He made to turn back, but Wayne grabbed his arm, pulling him forward. "We can't help him now," Wayne said, his words thick with grief. "We have to keep moving." Dr. Chen, her face pale and her eyes wide with shock, stumbled on, her gaze fixed on Vola's back. The Hirogen, seemingly oblivious to the chaos around him, veered suddenly to the left, heading towards a solitary structure that still stood amidst the destruction. He placed his hand against the obsidian wall, and a hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow, spiraling staircase that descended into darkness. Without a word, Vola plunged into the shadows, and the others had no choice but to follow. As they made their way down the winding steps, the walls pulsed with an eerie, bioluminescent light, casting ghostly shadows across their faces. At the bottom of the staircase, they found themselves in a cavernous chamber that hummed with energy. The room was filled with technology that made their own seem primitive by comparison, with sleek consoles and glowing screens that displayed incomprehensible symbols and diagrams. Vola strode towards a circular platform at the center of the room, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. He placed his hand on a glowing panel, and the platform thrummed to life, a holographic star map springing into existence above it. Wayne, Jack, and Dr. Chen exchanged uneasy glances, their minds reeling with questions and doubts. Could they trust this alien being, this creature who had nearly killed Wayne only moments before? But as the chamber shook with the force of the planet's death throes, they realized they had no other choice. Stepping onto the platform, they watched as Vola activated the device, his fingers dancing across the glowing controls. A blinding light filled the room, and for a moment they felt as though they were falling, their bodies stretched and compressed by forces beyond their understanding. When the light faded, they found themselves in another chamber, similar to the one they had left behind, but here the walls were adorned with intricate carvings, depicting scenes from a history they could only guess at. Vola stepped off the platform, his silver eyes gleaming in the dim light. He beckoned for them to follow, his movements filled with a sense of urgency. As they stepped forward, the chamber shook once more, and a deep, ominous rumble filled the air. Wayne, Jack, and Dr. Chen followed Vola through the labyrinthine corridors, their footsteps echoing in the eerie stillness. The walls pulsed with an otherworldly energy, casting shadows that seemed to dance and writhe with a life of their own. As they rounded a corner, they found themselves standing at the threshold of a vast, cavernous chamber. The room was filled with towering, translucent cylinders, each one glowing with an amber light that bathed the space in an ethereal radiance. Within each cylinder, suspended in the luminous liquid, was a hierogen, their features obscured by the shifting, shimmering surface. Wayne felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the true scale of the chamber. There were hundreds, perhaps thousands, of these stasis pods, each one housing a dormant warrior waiting to be awakened. Vola approached one of the cylinders, his silver eyes reflecting the amber glow. He placed his hand on the smooth surface, and the cylinder hummed softly in response. The liquid within began to churn and bubble, and the hydrogen inside stirred, their limbs twitching as if caught in the throes of a dream. "This is a stasis chamber," Vola said, his voice a guttural whisper that seemed to reverberate through the very air. "We have been waiting here for millennia, preparing for a great war that was prophesied long ago." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder and trepidation. "A war? Against whom?" Vola turned to face them, his expression grave. "Not against whom, but against what? We are not the aggressors in this conflict, but rather the guardians of the galaxy, tasked with protecting all sentient life from an ancient malevolent force known as the Void." He led them to a central control panel, where he waved his hand over a glowing orb. A holographic display sprang to life, depicting a dark, swirling mass that seemed to consume everything in its path. Wayne felt a primal fear grip his heart as he watched the void devour stars and planets, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. "The Void is a sentient entity that feeds on the energy of living beings," Vola explained, his voice heavy with the weight of ages. "It has been slowly growing in power, waiting for the right moment to strike. We have been monitoring its activity for eons, and now that it has begun to move, we must awaken from our stasis and prepare for the coming battle." Jack shook his head in disbelief. "But why us? Why did you bring us here?" Vola turned to them, his silver eyes glinting with a newfound respect. "Your arrival on Zeta 9 was no coincidence. Your species has a crucial role to play in the war against the Void. We have been watching humanity's progress, impressed by your resilience, adaptability, and unwavering determination in the face of adversity. These qualities make you the perfect allies in the fight against the void. Wayne felt a surge of pride and fear intermingle in his chest. The fate of the galaxy, of all sentient life, rested on their shoulders. He glanced at Jack and Dr. Chen, seeing the same mix of emotions reflected in their eyes. As if sensing their unspoken questions, Vola gestured to the stasis pods that surrounded them. "We must awaken the others," he said, his voice tinged with urgency. "Time grows short, and we must prepare for the battle to come." He placed his hand on another cylinder, and the room filled with the soft hum of awakening warriors. One by one, the Hirogen began to emerge from their stasis, their silver eyes blinking in the amber light. Wayne, Jack, and Dr. Chen watched in awe as the chamber came to life, the air crackling with an ancient primal energy. They knew that their journey had only just begun, and that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. As the Hirogen warriors gathered around them, Vola turned to the humans, his expression a mix of determination and something akin to hope. "Come," he said, his voice a low rumble. "We have much to discuss, and little time to waste." Wayne, Jack, and Dr. Chen exchanged uneasy glances as Vola turned to the rows of stasis pods, his ancient hands moving deftly across the controls. One by one, the amber liquid inside the cylinders began to drain, and the slumbering Hirogen within stirred, their silver eyes flickering open. Sensing the humans' apprehension, Vola gestured for them to explore the vast underground complex. "Familiarize yourselves with our ways," he said, his voice a low rumble. "The knowledge you gain may prove crucial in the battles to come." The trio ventured into the labyrinthine corridors, their footsteps echoing in the eerie stillness. They soon discovered a series of cavernous training rooms, each one filled with an array of advanced weaponry and combat simulations. Holographic displays flickered to life, depicting the Hirogen engaged in fierce battles against shadowy, writhing entities that could only be the minions of the void. Dr. Chen, her scientific curiosity piqued, immediately set to work studying the simulations. Her fingers danced across the alien controls, her brow furrowed in concentration as she sought to unravel the secrets of the void's weaknesses. Wayne and Jack, meanwhile, found themselves drawn deeper into the complex, following a faint, pulsating light that seemed to call out to them. They entered a dimly lit chamber, their breath catching in their throats as they beheld the source of the ethereal glow. Before them stood a massive, pulsating orb of energy, its surface swirling with iridescent colors that seemed to shift and change with each passing moment. Tendrils of light slowly extended from the orb, gently brushing against Wayne and Jack's minds. In an instant, they were bombarded with a rush of images and sensations, glimpses of the Hirogen's ancient past and the countless battles they had fought against the relentless onslaught of the void. They saw worlds consumed by darkness, entire civilizations erased from existence, and the unwavering resolve of the Hirogen as they stood firm against the tide of oblivion. As quickly as the visions had come, they vanished, leaving Wayne and Jack gasping for breath, their hearts racing in their chests. Suddenly the orb began to pulse erratically, its light flickering and dimming. A deafening alarm filled the chamber, the sound reverberating off the walls and through their very bones. Vola burst into the room, his silver eyes wide with urgency. "The heart of the Hirogen has detected a disturbance in the fabric of space-time," he said, his voice strained. "The void is on the move. We must act quickly, for our time grows short." He gathered the newly awakened Hirogen warriors, their faces etched with grim determination. Turning to Wayne, Jack, and Dr. Chen, he pressed a sleek, crystalline weapon into each of their hands. The weapons pulsed with an inner light, their surfaces cool and smooth to the touch. "These are the only weapons capable of harming the void and its minions," Vola explained, his voice heavy with the weight of ages. "Wield them with courage and honor, for the fate of the galaxy rests on our shoulders." As the humans and Hirogen made their way to the surface, a chilling sight greeted them. The once peaceful sky of Zeta 9 had been transformed into a roiling mass of darkness, shot through with veins of sickly purple light. The air itself seemed to tremble with an unnatural energy. a palpable sense of dread settling over the planet's surface. The void had arrived, and the battle for the fate of the galaxy had begun. Wayne gripped his weapon tightly, his heart pounding in his chest as he stared into the face of oblivion. Beside him, Jack and Dr. Chen stood ready, their faces set with determination. A sound like the tearing of reality itself filled the air, and the void's minions began to pour from the sky, their forms twisted and grotesque, their eyes burning with an unholy hunger. They descended upon the planet's surface like a plague, their numbers seemingly endless. Wayne raised his weapon, the crystalline surface thrumming with power. He looked to Jack and Dr. Chen, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of the void. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. They were the last line of defense, the only thing standing between the void and the annihilation of all they held dear. With a fierce battle cry, the Harogen charged forward, their weapons flashing in the darkness. Wayne, Jack, and Dr. Chen followed suit, their own weapons pulsing with energy as they met the void's minions head-on. The battle was joined, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The air was filled with the sounds of clashing weapons and the unearthly shrieks of the void's minions. Wayne fought with a ferocity he had never known, his weapon carving through the shadowy entities like a hot knife through butter. Beside him, Jack and Dr. Chen battled with equal determination, their faces etched with a grim resolve. The Harogen warriors moved like a well-oiled machine, their movements precise and deadly, their weapons leaving trails of searing light in their wake. But the void's minions were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. For every one that fell, two more seemed to take its place, their twisted forms surging forward with a ravenous hunger. Wayne felt his strength beginning to wane, his arms growing heavy with fatigue. He glanced at Jack and Dr. Chen, seeing the same exhaustion mirrored in their eyes. Even the Harogen, with their ancient weapons and centuries of combat experience, seemed to be faltering under the onslaught. Suddenly a piercing cry echoed across the battlefield. Wayne turned, his heart leaping into his throat as he saw Vola, the ancient Harogen warrior, fall to his knees, his weapon clattering to the ground beside him. The void's minions swarmed around him, their shadowy forms obscuring him from view. Wayne fought his way towards Vola, his weapon flashing in the darkness, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear Jack and Dr. Chen behind him, their own weapons carving a path through the sea of writhing entities. As they reached Vola's side, Wayne's blood ran cold. The ancient Harogen lay motionless, his silver eyes staring sightlessly into the roiling sky above. His once powerful form was ravaged, his armor shattered, and his flesh torn. Wayne felt a surge of grief and rage wash over him, his grip tightening on his weapon. He looked to Jack and Dr. Chen, seeing the same emotions etched on their faces. They knew in that moment that the battle had taken a dire turn. The void's minions pressed in around them, their unearthly shrieks filling the air. Wayne, Jack, and Dr. Chen stood back to back, their weapons at the ready, their faces set with grim determination. They knew that they might not survive this battle, that the void's hunger might prove too great to overcome. But they also knew that they would fight to their last breath, that they would give everything they had to protect the galaxy from the encroaching darkness. As the void's minions surged forward once more, Wayne raised his weapon, a fierce battle cry tearing from his throat. He charged into the fray, Jack and Dr. Chen at his side, their weapons flashing in the darkness. The battle raged on, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, and though the odds seemed insurmountable, Wayne, Jack, and Dr. Chen fought on, their courage and determination a shining beacon in the face of oblivion. As the battle against the void's minions raged on the surface, Wayne, Jack, and Dr. Chen found themselves cut off from the main group. A pack of shadowy creatures, their forms seeming to absorb the very light around them, pursued the trio relentlessly. The three humans took cover in a network of interconnected caves, their crystalline weapons flashing in the darkness as they fended off the creatures' attacks. The air was thick with the stench of ozone and the eerie, high-pitched shrieks of the void's minions. "We can't keep this up forever," Jack panted, his face streaked with sweat and grime. We need to find a way out of here. Dr. Chen, her eyes narrowed in concentration, scanned the cave walls. There, she said, pointing to a narrow opening partially hidden by a rocky outcropping. That might lead us deeper into the caves, away from these things. Wayne nodded, his grip tightening on his weapon. Let's move. The trio made their way through the opening, the sounds of the battle fading behind them as they delved deeper into the caves. The air grew colder and more stale, and the only light came from the soft glow of their crystalline weapons. As they pushed forward, they found themselves in a hidden chamber, its walls covered in ancient Hyrogen artifacts and inscriptions. Dr. Chen, her curiosity piqued, began to examine the inscriptions, her fingers tracing the alien glyphs. "This is incredible," she breathed. "These inscriptions tell of a legendary Hyrogen warrior known as the Guardian of Light. It says he wielded a weapon of immense power, capable of pushing back the darkness and defeating the void." Wayne and Jack exchanged a glance, a flicker of hope igniting in their eyes. "If we could find that weapon," Wayne said, "it might be the key to turning the tide of this battle." The three began to search the chamber, their eyes scanning the artifacts for any clue to the weapon's whereabouts. As Wayne examined a particularly intricate carving, his hand brushed against a small, hidden switch. With a soft click, the switch activated, and a secret passageway opened in the chamber wall. The trio exchanged a look of surprise and trepidation. "Should we?" Jack asked, his voice trailing off. Wayne nodded, his jaw set. "We have to. If there's even a chance this could help us defeat the void, we need to take it." With hearts pounding and weapons at the ready, they entered the passageway, the darkness swallowing them whole. The air grew colder still, and the walls seemed to press in around them. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into a vast underground cavern. At the center of the cavern stood a towering statue of a Hyrogen warrior, its features chiseled and proud, and there, clasped in the statue's hands, was a glowing crystalline weapon, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Wayne stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the weapon. He reached out, his fingers closing around the hilt, but as he did so, the cavern began to shake violently, dust and debris raining down from above. The statue's eyes flared to life, glowing with an intense white light. A deep, resonant voice filled the air, speaking in the ancient Hyrogen language. "Prove your worth, Guardian of Light, and claim your destiny." "We have to do this," Wayne said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "It's the only way to claim the weapon and defeat the void." Jack and Dr. Chen nodded, their faces etched with determination. Together they navigated a treacherous maze filled with deadly traps, their every step a calculated risk. Razor-sharp blades sliced through the air, missing them by mere inches, while hidden pitfalls threatened to swallow them whole. As they progressed, the challenges became more cerebral, testing their mental acuity with complex puzzles that seemed to defy logic. Dr. Chen's brow furrowed as she worked to decipher the ancient Hyrogen glyphs, her mind racing to find the solutions. But the most harrowing trials were yet to come. The cavern shifted and the walls melted away, replaced by the manifestations of their deepest fears. For Wayne, it was the sight of his crewmates, lifeless and broken, their bodies strewn across a desolate landscape. He fought back the rising panic, reminding himself that this was merely an illusion, a test of his resolve. With each challenge overcome, the weapon in the statue's hands began to glow brighter, its energy pulsing in response to their efforts. Finally, battered and weary, Wayne stood before the statue once more. He reached out, his fingers closing around the hilt of the weapon, and felt a surge of power coursing through his veins. The cavern shook violently, and the statue crumbled to dust, revealing a hidden portal. Without hesitation, Wayne, Jack, and Dr. Chen stepped through, finding themselves back on the surface of Zeta 9 in the midst of the raging battle against the void. Wayne raised the Guardian's weapon high, and a brilliant beam of light erupted from its tip, piercing the heart of the void. The darkness recoiled, and the void's minions began to disintegrate, their unearthly shrieks fading into the wind. The Hyrogen, seeing the tide turning, rallied around Wayne, their renewed vigor driving the Void's forces back. As the battle neared its end, Volar approached Wayne, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "The Guardian's weapon is powerful," Volar said, his voice heavy with emotion, "but it demands a great sacrifice from its wielder." Wayne, understanding the price he must pay, nodded solemnly. He charged forward, plunging the weapon deep into the core of the Void. A blinding explosion rocked the battlefield, the shockwave knocking Jack and Dr. Chen to the ground. When the light faded, the Void was gone, and Wayne with it. Jack and Dr. Chen, their hearts heavy with grief, joined the Hirogen in a moment of silence for their fallen friend. Volar, his voice thick with emotion, declared, "Wayne's sacrifice will never be forgotten. The Hirogen will honor his memory by continuing to protect the galaxy from the forces of darkness." As the humans and Hirogen parted ways, Jack and Dr. Chen made a vow to carry on Wayne's legacy, knowing that his bravery and selflessness had forever changed the course of the galaxy. In the weeks that followed the battle against the Void, the Hirogen and humans worked side by side to rebuild what had been lost. They salvaged what technology they could from the ruins of Zeta 9, using it to fortify their defenses and heal the wounded. Dr. Chen, her mind still reeling from the loss of Wayne, threw herself into her work. She spent long hours in the makeshift laboratory, analyzing the residual energy signatures left behind by the Void. It was during one of these late-night sessions that she stumbled upon a disturbing discovery. The data scrolled across the screen, a series of complex algorithms and waveforms that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she realized the implications of what she was seeing. The Void, it turned out, was not a singular entity but a manifestation of something far more sinister. It was merely a scout, a precursor to a vast, interdimensional empire known as the Shadowlands. Dr. Chen's hands shook as she delved deeper into the data. The Shadowlands, it seemed, had been manipulating events from behind the scenes for eons, orchestrating conflicts and feeding off the chaos and suffering of countless civilizations. She staggered from the lab, her face pale and her eyes haunted. She found Jack in the common area, poring over star charts and battle plans. "Jack," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." As Dr. Chen shared her findings, Jack's face grew increasingly somber. He called for Volar, knowing that the ancient Hirogen would want to hear this news firsthand. When Volar arrived, his silver eyes were filled with a weariness that seemed to stretch across the ages. He listened intently as Dr. Chen repeated her discovery, his expression growing more and more grave. "I feared this day would come," Volar said, his voice heavy with resignation. "The Hirogen have long suspected the existence of the Shadowlands, but we have been powerless to stop them." He turned to Jack, his gaze piercing. The war against the Void was merely a delaying tactic, a way to buy time for the galaxy to prepare for the true battle that lies ahead. Jack's mind reeled with the implications of Volar's words. He thought of Wayne, of the sacrifice he had made to defeat the Void. Had it all been for nothing? As if in answer to his unspoken question, Jack suddenly found himself assaulted by a barrage of images and sensations. He saw Wayne, his face contorted in agony, reaching out to him from a place of endless darkness. Dr. Chen, too, seemed to be experiencing something similar. She clutched at her head, her eyes screwed shut in pain. When the visions finally subsided, Jack and Dr. Chen looked at each other with a newfound understanding. They realized that Wayne's sacrifice, while noble, may have been in vain. His soul, it seemed, was now trapped in the Shadowlands, forever tormented by the very darkness he had sought to destroy. The weight of this knowledge hung heavy in the air, a palpable presence that seemed to press down on them from all sides. They knew that they stood on the precipice of a new, far more terrifying conflict, one that would require all of their strength and courage to overcome. But even as they grappled with this newfound knowledge, Jack and Dr. Chen knew that they could not face this challenge alone. The Hirogen, for all their strength and technology, were not enough to stand against the Shadowlands. They would need to find a way to unite the galaxy, to bring together all of the disparate races and factions that had been scattered by the Void's onslaught. Only then, with the combined might of the galaxy at their backs, would they stand a chance of defeating the Shadowlands and freeing Wayne's soul from its eternal torment. As they set off on this new mission, the weight of the galaxy's fate heavy on their shoulders, Jack and Dr. Chen knew that the true battle for survival had only just begun. They exchanged a look of grim determination, their eyes filled with a resolve that burned brighter than any star. The path ahead would be long and fraught with peril, but they would not rest until they had seen it through to the end. For Wayne, for the Hirogen, and for all the countless lives that hung in the balance, they would fight on, no matter the cost. Jack and Dr. Chen began their mission to unite the galaxy against the Shadowlands, but they quickly encountered resistance. Many alien races, traumatized by the Void's devastation, balked at allying with humans and Hirogen. On the planet Zephyria, Jack met with the Zephyrian High Council, his voice echoing through the cavernous chamber. "The Shadowlands threaten us all. We must stand together." The Zephyrian Councillor narrowed his eyes. "Your species is young, untested, and the Hirogen warmongers, why should we trust you?" Jack leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Because if we fall, you fall. The Shadowlands will consume everything in their path." Dr. Chen faced similar challenges on Andoria Prime, where the Andorians viewed her with open suspicion. "The Shadowlands have already infiltrated your government," she warned. "They're manipulating you, turning you against potential allies." But as Jack and Dr. Chen persisted, gathering intelligence through covert ops, the truth became clear. The Shadowlands had tendrils everywhere, pulling strings, sowing chaos. And their technology had advanced to horrifying levels. On a secret mission, Jack infiltrated a Shadowlands research facility. What he found chilled him to his core. Test subjects, their minds warped and controlled, turned into puppets for the Shadowlands' twisted agenda. Jack barely escaped with his life, the screams of the test subjects echoing in his mind. Back on their ship, Jack and Dr. Chen pored over the data they'd gathered. The situation was more dire than they'd ever imagined. "We're out of time," Dr. Chen said, her face pale. "The Shadowlands are preparing for a final offensive. We have to strike now while we still can." But as they laid their plans, something else haunted them. Visions of Wayne trapped in the Shadowlands, his soul crying out for help. They knew that to free him, they had to destroy the Shadowlands at their source. The assault began in a blaze of fire and fury. The Coalition fleet, a ragtag mix of ships from a dozen races, tore through the Shadowlands' defenses. But the cost was high. Ships exploded into supernovas of shrapnel and plasma. Screams filled the comms as pilots and soldiers fell. Jack and Dr. Chen fought their way to the heart of the stronghold, their weapons blazing, their armor scorched and battered. And there, in a chamber pulsing with malevolent energy, they confronted the leader of the Shadowlands. A being of pure darkness, its form shifting and twisting like smoke. "Welcome," it hissed, its voice a chorus of 1,000 tortured whispers. "You're just in time to witness the dawn of a new age." And then from the shadows a figure emerged, a figure they knew all too well. Wayne. His eyes gleamed with an unholy light, his face twisted into a cruel smile. Wayne laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "They've shown me the truth, the power of the Shadowlands, and now I'm one of them." "No, this isn't you, Wayne. You're stronger than this. Fight it." "There's nothing to fight, Jack. This is what I am now, what I was always meant to be." He raised his hand and a pulse of dark energy slammed into Jack, sending him flying. But he was too fast, too strong. He caught her by the throat, lifting her off the ground. "Poor Dr. Chen," he purred, always so naive, so blind to the true nature of the universe. This was it, the final confrontation, the moment that would decide the fate of the galaxy. He raised his weapon, his finger tightening on the trigger. But could he do it? Could he kill his best friend, his brother in arms? Even if that friend had become a monster? Wayne turned to him, his eyes burning with dark fire. "Do it, Jack," he hissed. "End it! End me!" Wayne staggered back, his form flickering, dissolving. And then he was gone, consumed by the light. The leader of the Shadowlands screamed, a sound that shattered the very air. But it was too late. The stronghold was crumbling, the Shadowlands' power broken. Jack and Dr. Chen stumbled out into the ruins, their hearts heavy with grief and loss. Wayne was gone, his soul lost to the darkness. And the scars of the conflict would linger for generations. As they stood amidst the rubble, Jack and Dr. Chen knew that their journey was far from over. The road ahead would be long and hard, the wounds deep and slow to heal. For the future of the galaxy. The war was over, but the fight for survival had only just begun. As the last vestiges of the Shadowlands crumbled into oblivion, Jack and Dr. Chen exchanged a weary glance. The weight of their victory hung heavy on their shoulders, the price paid in blood and sacrifice. "Let's go home," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. The journey back to Earth was a somber one, the silence broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. They had saved the galaxy, but at what cost? As they approached Earth, Dr. Chen's brow furrowed. "Something's wrong," she said, her eyes fixed on the view screen. Where once there had been a vibrant blue and green world, now there was only a sickly, pulsating darkness. They landed on the outskirts of what had once been a thriving city, now reduced to ruins. The streets were empty, the buildings crumbling and decayed. A figure emerged from the shadows, his face gaunt and haunted. "The Umbral Order," he said, his voice trembling. "They took over after you left." Jack and Dr. Chen listened in horror as the man recounted the rise of the Umbral Order, a faction of humans who believed that the only way to survive was to embrace the darkness. They had seized control in the chaos following the defeat of the Shadowlands, using fear and intimidation to cement their power. They began to investigate, moving through the shadows and gathering what information they could. It wasn't long before they uncovered the truth. The leaders of the Umbral Order were none other than the surviving members of their own expedition to Zeta 9. And at their head was Steve Rodriguez, a man they had long thought dead. "He was taken by the Shadowlands," a resistance fighter told them, "twisted and corrupted. Now he seeks to do the same to all of us." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. They had fought side by side with Steve, trusted him with their lives, and now he had become the very thing they had sworn to destroy. They began to wage a new war, a guerrilla campaign against the Umbral Order. They struck from the shadows, sabotaging supply lines and gathering what allies they could, but always the knowledge of who they were fighting against weighed heavy on their hearts. In the final battle they confronted Steve, now a monstrous being of pure shadow. His eyes, once bright with laughter, were now cold and empty. "Please," he whispered, his voice a twisted echo of the man he had once been. "End it." With tears in their eyes, Jack and Dr. Chen did what they had to do. They watched as their friend dissolved into nothingness, a final mercy in a world gone mad. In the aftermath, they stood among the ruins of their world, the Umbral Order defeated, but at a terrible cost. Earth was shattered, its people broken and divided. "What now?" Dr. Chen asked, her voice hollowed with grief. Jack looked out over the ruins, his eyes haunted. "We rebuild," he said, "and we hope." You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.